Our 3:30 breakout session, and we're fortunate to have with us this afternoon Dr. John Paul Cano, and I think many of you know him through both of his work domestically in the U.S. and now a good amount of work that he is doing in Mexico. His presentation about Sonora-Mexico Swine Biosecurity Certification Program is why we are all here. If you did not already know, Dr. Cano has a PhD in veterinary medicine from Minnesota, was also an EVP diplomat from University of Illinois, and before practicing in the U.S. was in practice in Venezuela, and has been as well the Director of Health with America's PIC, and is currently the Health Director at Pipestone, Latin America. Dr. Cano.
Thank you, Bill. Can you hear me in the back? Fine? Perfect. Thank you, Bill, for that introduction. Thanks a lot. Thank you to Dr. Monse Torremore for the invitation to the session and to the organizing committee. It's a pleasure being here today. Thanks for coming to this session while there are so many good talks around there too. So today I'm just a messenger, a bunch of people working on this project from Pipestone, from the Pork Producers Association in Sonora, other people there. So I'm just sharing with you some of that information. And my personality, I would wait a little bit until this has more success or more results. It's still a work in progress, but I see it. I understand that there's value in sharing things that are in progress and learn from those processes. So for some of you that don't know exactly, Sonora is located in the northwest of Mexico. So it'll border with Arizona mainly and Texas a little bit there, but mainly Arizona. It's the second pork producer in Mexico after Jalisco in the center. It has a desertic climate, very hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and it's very isolated. The closest pigs will be about 1,000 miles from that state, organized pig production. There's a history of communication and cooperation among producers. They used to buy grain, or they still buy grain together. They used to sell pigs together. They have a lot of history of cooperation in the state that also helps for this kind of projects. They have a strong pork union, they call it, pork association, pork producer association, and they have a health committee within their organization that is very empowered and is equipped with a veterinarian that is a director and then 3 technicians that work around. So they have that structure already. And they have, I would say, the most capable diagnostic lab in Mexico. Very, very capable lab, ITSON, that is very well run and you can trust results very well. So some of the strengths of that industry in Sonora. You will recognize Dr. Carlos Pilluan in this picture. He is here with Dr. Luis Olea, another vet and pork producer in Sonora. And years ago, they and others started this idea of, well, because all these points that I just mentioned, can we think or dream about Sonora being free of PRRS? At that time was PRRS the main excuse, right? And they started working on this, and you can recognize these maps as Enrique Mondaca's map in one of Carlos' articles, years ago, and they started doing dendrograms for the region and sharing information and all that. So it's been happening for 20 years. A lot of good people has worked there. Monsi and Laura and Eduardo have tried to make this happen. The reality is that in practical terms of health change, little has happened, right? So they haven't eradicated PRRS, they haven't eradicated PD, so the question is why that hasn't been successful. And I'm now pulling an article that Dr. Laura Batista wrote, I think last year, that she kind of described 5 reasons why these ARC projects have not been more successful or more sustainable. And I found them very, very interesting. First, she mentions that they has been set with a goal in mind of elimination, right away. Let's eliminate that disease and maybe 2 or 3 agents at the same time. So very complicated at the beginning, putting the bar way too high, setting the expectations probably at the wrong place. Second, the lack of effective vaccines, for example, for PRRS. Third, especially in Sonora and other projects, is the biosecurity is more complicated than it should be and focusing on aspects that are not necessarily the most important to reduce risk. So she talks about psychological biosecurity. And then partial collaboration, coordination, so not everybody is on the same boat. That has been key. And the phishing databases, right? So I'll touch on a couple here, trying to making that comparison to the project that we're working on in Sonora right now. When we got invited by the pork union to discuss this topic, the first thing that we said, Luke Minion said, well, we shouldn't talk about elimination, right? We should start talking about how can we establish something that is the foundation for elimination in the long future to set the expectations at the right place. The second one is, let's make this about biosecurity instead of disease elimination. Let's build that foundation that talks about biosecurity. And finally is, how do we get everybody in one regional industry to collaborate and share information and go in one path? And that's where probably a vet clinic plays a little bit of a role, which is setting up or the technical lead of that. So there's less discussion, less complexity among producers. There's a group that is trying to set the tone for the technical aspect. So the idea is, or has been built around offering a biosecurity certification for those producers that achieve some goals, right? So at the end of the process, you're gonna get a stamp that says your farm is certified in biosecurity for a year. How do we get that? Well, you need to pass audits, right? And those audits will be not only farm audits, but also truck wash, feed meal. If you have rendering, if you're finishing, you have mortality rendering, then you have to pass that audit. If you pass that, then you get your certificate. Before you do the audits, of course, you need to build a program, right? And that program is based on training. So there's a lot of training components into that process. I'll mention in the future. So you have your basic training. Once your farm is ready, then you start doing the audits. And then if you pass the audits, you get the certification. The first step, building all that up, I came kind of backwards, was to get agreement among producers, right? And that has been done before because of that culture of collaboration that exists in Sonora. And the main goal was, well, let's get everybody to agree to share the information real time. I had a purse break, I had a PD break, this is my sequence, but also trying to achieve a minimum biosecurity standard that I'll mention in the system. So we had those steps as the progression to finally get to a certified farm, biosecurity certified farm in the state. We all know risk factors around a farm, risk factors of disease introduction to a farm, right? I'm sharing this because what the committee tried to do in this project was to include the most critical aspects of biosecurity in the non-negotiables, so the top 10 biosecurity standards. Building that minimum biosecurity around the main factors that were contributing to disease transmission. I'll mention those 10. There's a list. You can take a look at the notes, or you can have the slides later, no problem. But the first 3 were mainly about the risk of your farm breaking based on first location. We understand farms are already built, but what about the new farms? The industry is going through a transformation right now, so new farms need to have some minimum distance to other sites to be built. So the producers agreed that no breeding herd will be built closer to 10 kilometers to other farms. They signed and said, yeah, I'll do that. And then win to finish sites. Remember, win to finish sites in Mexico are bigger because of water, roads, security. They want to do bigger breeding growing sites. They have to be at least 3 kilometers from any other production. Then the second one was flow. And because of those large finishers or win to finish sites in Mexico, it's very typical that you have continuous flow. So the producers agreed that they're going to have a maximum of 4 weeks of production in those sites, or they will commit to depopulate if needed. So if I have a PD break or a purse break, I'll depopulate my site that was 8 weeks of production, for example. The third one they were already doing from previous projects, buying semen and replacement animals from certified sources, or companies that will provide their purse, PD negative when they buy them. Those just examples of location and flow. The fourth one that they agreed and signed that agreement was on feed meals. So the feed meal, the farms agreed to ask their feed meal to use a chemical mitigant in all the feed that was used or is used in breeding herds. And second is to deliver feed following a biosecurity pyramid for that feed distribution. That was the agreement. The fifth aspect has to be with transport. And transportation The main goal was to separate the slaughter plant or the collection points to the sow farms. So every truck or tractor, trailer tractor or driver that will contact a collection point will not go directly to a sow farm. So there is a transfer, there is a drop and hook, there is a process before that. And number two, that every trailer that touches the site one will be inspected and approved by a third party or an auditor that has been certified by the program. Number six, just farm design, farm general biosecurity. They will try to make investments in their old farms or build the new farms, trying to have contained farms or clean, dirty lines that are well defined, that people know where they're in or out of the farm. Pretty much that. Number seven, rendering will not be allowed in breeding herds. If you still want to use rendering for your win to finish sites, then you have to have a certified rendering service that will pick your mortality up from the farm. So they agreed on that, all of them. By the way, 100% of producers sign the agreement on all these terms, right? Number eight, you just have to have a clear protocol of D&D room, what disinfectant, what concentration, all that you use. Number nine, you have to train your people. So when they come in, the first months of your employment, and then once a year, so you keep your people trained, training updated. And lastly, you have to commit to the audits that the committee is going to be doing. So those were the 10 points, non-negotiables, top 10 biosecurity standards that they were agreeing to help each other to achieve. Let me show you a little bit about the project or the demographics here. As I said, 100% of the owners of those pigs and farms signed the agreement. There are 396 sites between boar stats to win to finish barns. There are, you can see the breakout of those numbers there. One thing that we learned is that there are 370 backyard pig sites. They could go from one pig to 30 pigs, 40 pigs. So there are a lot of backyard pigs in Sonora, relatively close to production. There are 9 feed mills, 9 commercial truck washes, 15 packing plants between certified, like 6 of them, and the rest will be non-certified. They have been training auditors and trainers. There are 38 of those. I'll explain that program in a minute. And 4,200 people have been trained, officially trained by the program at this time. Sows, about 140,000 sows in Sonora. These are the regions. So in the south, Navajo region, then you have in the center, Obregon and Empalme. In the north, you have Hermosillo, now a new area region that is developing, is even northern, that is Caborca. Those are the regions in Sonora. One of the things that the project is doing is sharing, as many of the ARC projects in the States, a monthly bulletin, just a way of communicating with their members, right? So every month, the committee will prepare this bulletin and will be shared. So you have a little message to the producers. This is in Spanish, but I just want to explain what it is in the content. The demographic table, in case there are any changes. And then 3 tables here with health status following the ASV classification for PRRS, right, for PD and for Delta. How many sow farms are positive, stable, negative, whatever, all the categories in all those. So that's shared with all the members, participants, and all the industry in Sonora. They also get 3 sets of maps, one for the north, one for the south, that cover PRRS, PD, and Delta. So they get all those maps in one bulletin, and then pretty standard Bob Morrison's colors and shapes, right? So you have the red and bad, green is good. That they get that with a map. That map is really small, right? So if somebody says, well, I can't see my farm, there are too many farms, you can ask the committee to make your specific map. So if I'm the owner of this farm or the vet, I can ask them to, hey, can you map my region and get a cluster, right? 3 kilometers, 5, 10 kilometers. How many farms? What's the status of those farms? So this is more customized, but per request, but it has been very useful to take decisions out in the field. We don't have very sophisticated tools for sequence analysis. This is just a database that has been built over a year and a half of all 5 sequences for PRRS, for example. And then we keep a number on, okay, how many sequences or isolates have been included in the dendrogram that are within those boxes. I don't want to get into the weeds here. It could be just families or groups, but at least we know, right, if there are new viruses that are coming out of the ordinary of the sequences that we are detecting. So Itzon, Doctora Concepcion, she's helping with us. She's helping the project to keep this updated. And it was very useful. For example, 6 months ago, we had a couple 144s identified that were pretty nasty, and we want to check, hey, is that the US 1C strain or not? So it was very easy to pull everything that we had in the state. We found something in Sonora from 2016, and it was like 9% different to the US strain. So it was pretty good to have that database. In 10 minutes, you have that information. And finally, the bulletin includes an article, technical article, very lame terms of things that we want to communicate, right? Biosecurity, or sharing information, interpreting dendrograms, things like that, that could be useful for vets, for producers out in the system. So it's like 6 pages or 7, but very simple, organized, and we have very good feedback on how that's being used. Let me explain a little about training, how it works. We have trained or certified trainers and auditors, 38 people, and they take a course that is about 18 to 20 hours, 6 sessions, 2 to 3 hours each one of those, and there is a instructor that will talk about different topics to get them up to speed with biosecurity, disease transmission, disease diagnosis. So they get very well trained on that, so they can go and train other people, they can go and take samples, they can go and do audits. And then there is a massive training now for 4,200 people that they do, right? So each system or company might have 1 or 2 of those certified trainers, and then there are independent trainers that can go and do this training. And we have developed a PowerPoint deck and a video. It's a 26-minute video that they can use to teach the course and then go through that. So there's a lot of information on that. What is the program, the risk factors, some examples, and then at the end, this is like 30 slides. And then at the end, they take a quiz, 5 questions. If they pass, I think it's 4 out of 5, they get the certification of training. So that person is trained for a year, okay? In terms of auditing, I mentioned 4 components. The first one is the farm. So there's some questions, not too many. Not like a risk assessment. It's more like, are these farms complaining or complying with what they agreed to do, right? On those top 10, how close is the farm to that agreement on the compliance? The second one is the feed meal. Likewise, do we have a way to test or know if that feed meal is put in the mitigant, is distributing the feed meal, the feed in that fashion that was agreed? Truck wash, same thing, what they agreed to do, and then rendering, right? So there are audits for each one of those components in the chain that they are doing to be able to have a farm certified. It was arbitrarily decided that breeding herds with over 75 or growing sites above 65 will pass. So you have 3 options. We can be approved. If you are over that, you can have 1 or 2 observations, so it's pending. The inspector will come back in a month or 2 weeks or 1 week and decide if that passed or not. Or you can fail and work on your weaknesses and then apply again to be audited, okay? I won't get into details because of time here, but Dr. Karen Hallis, she's helping with epidemiology. So now that we have this beautiful database with statuses by month and with risk factors and locations and all that size of a farm, can we start looking at that and see what are the main risk factors? What are the hot spots that we have to put an eye on? So she's working a lot on that. There's things coming that will be very useful for the project. One thing that I have to accept, and it's a little bit sad for those of us that have been working closely with this project, is that we might be a little bit late for the small producers. And if you work in that region, you notice that in the last 6 months, maybe a year, the industry has been changing, has been consolidating very rapidly, faster than you would expect. I'll give you an example. This graph here will have the number of farms and units, right? Or the number of sows in thousands. And this, you'll have the number of owners of those farms or pigs, right? First, let me go through the number of farms. From 2017 to date, pretty close, right? 390 farms. Some farms age and disappear, some farms get built. But it's around that range, 380 to 400 farms in existence, right? South, they were from 140, climb up to 180,000, but about the same. I'd say that today, 140, so it doesn't change that much. But look at producers. The blue bars are big owners. They had 64 owners for quite some time, no change. And then boom, boom, boom. Today, 12 entities own the pigs and the farms of Sonora. So we were not on time to help the little guys to improve their health, to compete, and to be liable or viable in that industry, okay? Now, not everything is bad news. Good news is that now we only have to agree with 12 people, right? To get them on the same page and start doing something. So this came up a few months ago. They said, well, now we're less, right? And we know why others are leaving, so can we work together? So the hard way to learn. So they have started this PD elimination project in Sonora. Now that you have that foundation, all that data, all that routine, all that acceptance, all those tools to train and audit people on farms, then they're going to move to the next step. Why do we think that PD is a good subject to be considered for elimination? One, we all know is a high economic impact, right? A farm gets hit with PD, you lose 3 to 6 weeks of production of that year, if it is naive. Then the second one is that diagnostic is pretty simple, pretty easy. I know that yesterday there was a very intense debate about diagnostic of PD. Well, PCR is awesome, and then you can see the scours. I don't think it's that hard, right? So it's pretty evident that you can diagnose that disease pretty simply. Then number 3 is there is a strong cross protection. So a herd that is well immunized will be protected for some time. That will give you time to fix other things, right? Number 4 is that the vets, you guys are very good at understanding the tools, using those tools to eliminate the disease. Dr. Paul has said it many times, right, and many others, is PD is not hard to eliminate. So we know what we need to do in a farm basis, right? And last, now we have a very accurate and real-time database that could be used. So we can know what farms are positive, where are the positive pigs moving, and what farms are at risk. So we can use all that. This was from August, I believe. So you can see the number of positive farms, about 10% are actively positive. 4% will be stable, so PCR negative, but recently exposed. And these farms will be provisional negative, and these farms will be negative. This is publication we did at PIC years ago, but it's pretty close to the PRRS classification since we didn't have anything else to use, and you can see the numbers there. So there aren't that many farms that we should be tackling to protect a big proportion of the farms. This is kind of a timeline. Won't get into the details, but the idea will be to start, confirming, validating the health status of, PD status of the farms, identifying those positive farms and positive clusters around those farms, and then move to the next step. Start elimination in those breeding herds, and then outside to the win to finish sites that get those pigs, and the pigs or the farms that are around that cluster. And then you do it 1 year, you validate the status at the end of the year, and then you do it for the next year. I'm saying year or season, right? In between high-risk seasons. So it'll be like a 3-year effort to try to eliminate PD from the state. So we are here, just started. So in conclusion, just to close up and open for questions. First is that there is a high degree of collaboration already in the region and transparency. In these 2 years, they have, I think, as an industry, matured a lot. They are more comfortable sharing sequences, health statuses, and all that, and between producers and professionals. So we have to use that, leverage that. Second, I think that it has been built a science-based and sustainable and practical regional biosecurity program. So it's not too complicated. It's not too basic. It takes about 80% of the risk, if you think about it, of the farms. They have accepted. There's no debate about those 10, and they're just trying to get there. Number 3, of course, there's a lot of work to be done yet, right? I would say that health in the state, having farms there, has changed. It feels better, feels like less risky. Maybe not necessarily only because of this, but because of the consolidation that has happened. But is moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot to do. So PD is a real elimination on this in Sonora, and they're very excited to give it a try. I'll give a lot of credit to a lot of people here, but mainly first to Gustavo Pizarro. He has been pushing for this for years and say, hey, why don't we talk? There's everything to do it. So Gustavo has been very instrumental in doing that. Then a local producer, Miguel Olea, Solis producer, he has been a leader within his peers, right? Other producers, so telling them, hey, we can do this, is feasible, we can do it. And he has been leading as a local, right? And many other people that has helped on this project. So I think there's very good energy and flow into this project and could bring something that we can learn for using in other regions. Thanks for the time.
I think we have a couple of minutes for some questions.
A very good presentation, Jean Paul, and very good project too. So very, very jealous to a certain degree to see where you're taking it. So very nice. Quick question: as part of your audits that you do on a regular basis, what are you learning about the non-compliance issues that then you think about? We need to change. What are we missing, right? Are you learning anything that wasn't in those 10 points, for instance? So I just was curious. What are your findings as you do audits?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So I would say the main risk factors that have been identified are on older farms that were not designed thinking on modern biosecurity, right? So separated barns, you walk outside, things like that is the main obstacle, because how do you invest to make that change, right? It's the most expensive and people get frustrated. Well, my farm is gonna be always a 50. Well, or location, right? My farm is only going to be like a 75 if I'm perfect. Well, you need to be perfect if you're in a high dense region. So I think that the industry knew years ago, Monsi, that we needed to build different farms and we needed to build in different places, but the dynamic of the business just didn't let us stop and think about it, right? So one thing that we've learned is that this is making them stop and say, I can't build there, so I'll start asking and looking for other lots. So it's kind of an obstacle to rethink a little bit more your strategy long term, how you build your farm and where to build it. And we've learned that probably we need to do more work with slaughter plants because there is a lot of traffic there and we don't necessarily consider all the variables connecting to the slaughter plant, and they were not included in some of the audits. So there are things that could be better. And the last one that I mentioned that Dr. Joel is very big on that one is that we underestimated how big security is of a risk factor, right? So for us, it's, well, clean dirty line, right? You don't enter. Well, if you're gonna steal feed, you enter, and most likely you come from a pig farm, and that has been a big risk factor in Latin America, I would say in general, that we were not considered in audits and assessments.
JP, very nice job. Rendering's still pretty common in the US. You said it's one of your top 10 biosecurity. No rendering except through a certified renderer. Can you just briefly describe, well, what would that be, a certified renderer?
Good, very good point, Taylor. I would say that none of the breeding herds were doing rendering. Just a couple that were far to finish that once they learn about this, they stop. They just, that's not big. Because if you think about it, the main volume comes from finishers, right? So there's no need to pressure sow farms to have rendering. You can have other ways. What we included in that audit, and I can share with you guys later, is do they have a way to contain all the liquids, all the products that will come out of the collection process? And do they have a flow that you can verify that they can follow a dynamic biosecurity pyramid when they collect? And then they have a good process to wash, disinfect the trailer before the truck, before they restart the process. So mainly those three things is don't contaminate the site that you are collecting from, and then follow biosecurity pyramid, and then have a good process to restart that pyramid. Those will be the three main things in the audit.
Just a couple of seconds if anybody has one more burning question.
Neil?
Do you have a ship diagram on PRRS for that region, and does it look different seasonally?
What do you mean? Like where do
Like the
breaks
more
happen?
Yeah.
I don't have it here, but what we've noticed in the last years is that it became less of a seasonal effect, right? So I don't know, Laura and Monse might remember, years ago was pretty clear. November to January or February was kind of a high-risk season. I don't know if it is the amount of movements in the state or what, but it's been spreading out. So you have breaks in the summer, so it's less seasonal than it used to be, Neil. Thanks a lot for your time.